I just want to share a little bit with you out of an experience I had this past week. Now, some of you adults and a bunch of you kids went to a place a few weeks ago after church in the afternoon. It's called the Graber House. It's an olive factory, right? Remember that? Remember the Graber olive factory? Did you eat any olives there? Yeah? Did you see how olives were made and all of that sort of thing? Well, I want to show you a picture of an olive tree here. This is sort of a stylized picture, but it comes from an actual photograph. And olive trees are cultivated more than any other fruit tree, because an olive tree is considered a fruit tree, although you don't want to pick the olive and eat it right off the branches. That's bad. I don't know how many of you have done that. If you haven't, don't. They have to be cured. But they're cultivated more than any fruit tree except for oil palms and coconuts around the world. They've been around for at least 6,000 years. They can actually trace back the origins of olive trees at least 6,000 years back in certain areas. One of the first plants mentioned in the Bible was an olive tree. Remember when Noah was in the ark after the rains had stopped and the ark was floating on the water, if you know the Bible story, and he sent a bird out, and the bird that he sent out a dove, and the dove came back, and what did it have in its mouth? It had an olive branch in its mouth, that's right. So what are olives good for? Let's look at this picture, see what they're good for. They're good for eating, right? They're good to cure green or dark. There's all kinds of olives. There's some that are kind of small and dark and really strong flavored. They're very good. There's some that people cut out the middle. They take the seed out and they stuff things like garlic and pimentos in there. I love those. Diana hates them. There's some that are black. When I was a kid, we'd open up the can of olives, and my fingers were little then, and we would put one on each finger, you know? Still do. I haven't for a while. My great-grandfather was actually, this is the truth, my great-grandfather was an olive peddler. He picked olives, harvested olives, he cured them and put them in mason jars, canned them in mason jars, and then he went around door to door here in Southern California and sold olives. So I have a little bit of connection with the olive trade, although I never did that myself. What else are olives good for? Nachos. Olive oil. Olive oil. And about 90% of all the olive oil produced in the world comes from the Mediterranean Middle East area of the world. And of all the top producers, the top 10 producers, who do you think is number one? Any guesses? Any other guesses? Okay, Spain is the number one producer of olive oil. Believe it or not. Olive oil is used for food, it's used for medicine and fuel, it's used for a lubricant. I guess you can grease your axles with it, I don't know. And it's used for ritual uses. When we practice our practice of healing, when we anoint someone, we use olive oil to anoint them. And in other religions, olive oil is used for ritual purposes as well. I want to show you a picture. This grove is, I believe, somewhere in California, and these trees are over 100 years old. But that's what I want to talk about today, the olive tree. Especially the trunk, because the trunk of an olive tree doesn't look like very much. They're all twisted and gnarly. They look like they're only good for olives and oils. But we can learn a lot from the tree itself. I recently had an experience that got me thinking about this, and so I want to share 3 simple truths that I've learned out of this experience that kind of come out of the whole issue of the olive tree. And the first lesson I want to share with you is this: God sees our potential where others see only problems. God sees our potential where others see only problems or mistakes or flaws, and you can make a list there. And here's a verse in the Bible that is so critical to understanding this. It really is a verse that's about Jesus. It says this, Isaiah 53, verses 1 to 3. Who has believed our message, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? He grew up before him like a tender shoot and like a root out of dry ground. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by mankind, a man of suffering and familiar with pain, like one from whom people hide their faces. He was despised, and we held him in low esteem. This is talking about the Messiah to come, because Isaiah wrote this some 700 years before Jesus came to the earth. But it's speaking of the Messiah, and Jesus fulfilled this prophecy. And he's basically saying this is how, when Jesus shows up on the earth, when the Messiah shows up on the earth, this is how he's going to be received. People just aren't going to be all that interested. They didn't think much of him. He didn't come as a superstar. He didn't come with his posse, all his peeps. He didn't show up in a limousine or in a fancy carriage. And we're about to go into the Christmas season where we remember the story of how Jesus came in the most humble and lowly of circumstances. In fact, he was so ordinary that people didn't even pay any attention to him. It's kind of like olive trees. People might even have said of Jesus, he isn't even that good looking. Here's a couple of olive trees from the Holy Land. I don't know if you can see them very well, but they're not very pretty. They're kind of ugly. They're all twisted and bent, and these olive trees are at least 1,500 years old, maybe 2,000 years old. But they're located where Jesus lived. They may have been alive when Jesus walked on this earth. Isaiah said, there's no beauty or majesty. There's nothing in his appearance to be desired. People hid their faces from him, but human beings are not so good at seeing the true value of a person, are they? The people in Jesus' day sure missed it when it came to seeing him as the true Messiah. Here's something that comes out of the story of David that came from 1 Samuel 16:7. This is the verse that Christian read to us in the beginning. God does not view things the way men do. People look on the outward appearance, but what? The Lord looks at the heart. The Lord looks at the heart. I want to show you another grove of trees. These trees are actually from the Garden of Gethsemane. These trees very, very likely were the ones that Jesus walked through, the ones that he prayed in when he was on this earth. God sees in us what human beings can't see. He sees beauty and potential when people can only see ugliness and problems. Here's an olive plank. The picture of an olive plank. How do you get that much straight wood out of such a twisted, gnarly tree? But someone was able to do it. Most of the time, olive wood comes from branches that have been cut off because the olive tree is not cultivated for its wood. It's cultivated for its fruit and its oil. And so when they take olive wood and they create things from it, it comes from trimmings or prunings. So here's a plank of olive wood. Here's another picture. This is closer up of some wood grain of the olives. When you look closely at the olive wood, you see an incredible beauty in the grain and the color of the wood and in the hands of a master woodworker. It can be made into something beautiful, something useful. That brings me to my second truth. God takes us as we are and fashions us into what we can be. Daniel was just baptized, and sometimes people get the idea when they're baptized that that's like the height of their experience with Christ. And so they're just going to go on this walk with Jesus. It's all going to be good. There's not going to be any problems anymore, but that's not the way that it works. God takes us the way we are. He takes us in our humanity, in our brokenness, in our pain, and he fashions us into what he knows that we can become. This is what it says in Ephesians 2:10. For we are God's masterpiece, created in the Messiah Jesus to perform good actions that God prepared long ago to be our way of life. We are God's masterpiece. So now I want to tell you the story of a box. Diana, would you bring me the box? And then we're going to show you a picture of this in a moment up on the screen. A friend of mine, that Diane and I, actually a couple of friends of mine and hers, that we were visiting last Sunday, is an artisan, and he creates beautiful display boxes from all kinds of exotic woods. If you think the only wood is walnut and pine and maple and ash and some of the things that we are used to seeing, you should go visit an exotic hardwood store sometime. There are literally maybe hundreds of different kinds of wood from all over the world, some of the most beautiful, beautiful woods you could imagine. So when we visited him last weekend, he took me out into his workshop, and he showed me some of his projects, and I was asking him, how did he put them together, how did he cut the wood, and so forth. No two of the boxes that he makes are alike because he uses an array of rare colors and grains to make the boxes that reveal the true beauty of the wood. And he also told me he never stains his boxes because he wants the wood to really show through. If you were to look at the beauty of, say, a box like this and compare it to the olive tree, you'd say, how did that get out of there? But there was one box that caught my eye. It was an olive wood coffer with rounded lid and sides, and it had this unique burl in the center. Now you can see it on the screen. It's a little better close-up than seeing it here. You see that burl in the middle? That is part of the natural wood, and he was able to ascertain that and create the box to make that. And notice how he joins the corners. I took woodworking 101 in 8th grade, and I made a box, and the lid doesn't even fit on the top. It's so messed up. My friend explained that olive wood, while beautiful, is kind of temperamental in it. It's a bit unstable. So you get it all perfect, you put it all together, and then all of a sudden it starts changing a little bit. And that's what happened to this box. This one was finished, but it sat on the shelf with several other unfinished and failed box projects. But I was captivated not only by my friend's artistry, but also by the golden glow of the wood grain and its variant swirls and striations. See, olive trees are renowned, as we've already mentioned, for their ability to survive for centuries, even thousands of years. And I wondered, as I looked at this box, maybe the tree that this came from was alive when Jesus was on this earth, when he found sanctuary among the olive groves of Gethsemane. And I told him, I said, this is so beautiful. And its imperfection, which I wouldn't have noticed, but the lid just sits up a little bit on one corner from where it's supposed to be. Its imperfection, for me, only adds to its elegance. So before Diana and I left, he gave it to me as a gift. See, God is like my friend Mr. West. He takes the raw wood of our lives and he works with it and cuts it and carves it and sands it and fits it together and polishes it up until it becomes a beautiful work of art. And that's what he can do for you and me. He can shape our lives into something beautiful. Other people may say to you and to me, well, that person, he'll never amount to anything, or she isn't very talented or pretty. People do say that stuff. Or he's made so many mistakes in his life, he'll never be of any use to God at all or to anybody else. But that's not the way God thinks, is it? He sees your life and my life. He looks past the failures and the imperfections of the outside, and he looks deep into your heart to see the potential beauty and the worth that you are. And when you say yes to Jesus, just like Daniel did today, when you say yes to Jesus, when Daniel was baptized, he said yes to Jesus, then God starts to work. In fact, he's already started to work. It's not always easy. It doesn't always feel good, but if you let him, he will turn you into someone who is like Jesus, full of grace and truth and beauty, which brings me to my last truth. God does not just make you beautiful. He does not just make me beautiful. I'm not sure you all would use that adjective when you talk about me, but he makes us useful. We're designed to hold something like this box holds something. We are designed, this is the last truth, to be filled with God. We are designed to be filled with God. 1 John 4:12 says this, "No one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God lives in us, and His love is made complete in us." Can you imagine anything more amazing, more miraculous than God living in our lives, in our minds? When my friend gave me the box, I thanked him and I told him that it would make the perfect case for another olive wood item that someone gave me a few years ago. Actually, it was Keith Plummer. After he and Virginia had taken a trip to the Holy Land, he gave this to me. It's a piece of olive wood that's been carved, and it forms the word Jesus into a cross. And you can see this up on the screen. And immediately I thought, that's the perfect thing to put inside Mr. West's box. And so that's what I did. I put the Jesus cross inside the box. I've been thinking about this gift box, looking at it every day since he gave it to me last Sunday, or Monday. Maybe it was Sunday, wasn't it? Yeah. And to me, it represents the workmanship of God in my life. He takes a chunk of seemingly unusable humanity, and He shapes it into something beautiful, not despising the imperfections and the flaws, but He highlights them and turns the entire piece into an exquisite receptacle for another piece of His handiwork. And what is it what does He make the box contain? In my life, He makes me contain the handiwork of His work in Jesus Christ. A work named Jesus who was also bypassed, ignored, and even cut down. A work who reveals the stress, the wounds, and attacks that He suffered. Injuries that have only made Him more beautiful. He's not a relic to be hidden away on a shelf, but a Redeemer to be held inside of me. A Savior who is revealed whenever I am opened. This box represents your life and my life that God is shaping and sanding and polishing and finishing, because He wants us to realize the precious gift that He has placed inside, the gift of Jesus Christ. This is what 2 Corinthians 4:7 says. This precious treasure, this light and power that now shine within us, is held in a perishable container, that is, in our weak bodies. Everyone can see that the glorious power within must be from God, and it is not our own. So when you think about your life, or when you get discouraged because somebody said something to you that wasn't too flattering, when you get discouraged by your own mistakes and your own failings, when you get depressed over the condition of your heart and the lack of love that you might have, remember God, if you let Him, God is working to turn you into something absolutely beautiful, to contain what is the most beautiful in the world, that is the presence of His own Son, Jesus Christ. Let's pray. Lord, our lives are so much like the outside of those olive trees. They're not really much to look at. And yet you have such an amazing eye for potential. You're able to take what most everyone else would just throw away and shape it into something not only of beauty but of value, something of use. And when we surrender our lives to you, God, and let you have your way inside of us, and let you use all the experiences and situations in our life, both good and bad, we let you use those things to shape us and to mold us and to refine us, then you absolutely will turn us into a work of art. But not one that's going to be in a museum. You want to turn us into something that will hold in our hearts the light and the glory of Jesus Christ. His salvation, His grace, His goodness, because you, just like the song before we started here, says, you are a good, good Father. And Lord, you know, as Daniel and I talked to him about when Jesus was baptized, how he was when he raised up out of the water, he heard the voice, "This is my beloved Son, and I am so happy with him." And that I wanted Daniel to hear that same voice that you are saying to him, he is your beloved Son. And Lord, each one of us here today, we need to hear your voice say to each of us, you are my precious child, my beautiful child, and I am so happy with you because, Lord, you accept us where we're at. You take us into your heavenly workshop no matter what we look like because you know what we can become. And so today, God, we just ask that you would again speak to our hearts. That if there are people here today who've never said yes to you, that this will be an opportunity. They'll say, yes, Lord, I want to surrender my life into your hands and let you do your work in me. If they would do that. And if there are people here today who have done it in the past, but they find themselves kind of confused and sitting on a shelf, that they would once again say, Lord, take over. I'm tired of trying to shape my life into what I think it should be. I want you to make me into what you want me to be. And God, we offer up our lives to you today. And we thank you so much for the precious gift of your Son, Jesus Christ. We pray this in his name.